And welcome to Haiku Talk. I'm your host, Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet. And today we're going to be taking a look at a middle pivot poem from the latest issue of Wales Haiku Journal that comes to us from Margarita Drozdoff with the first line of Campfire Stew. So with that said, it's time to kick back, relax, grab yourself a tasty beverage, and let's haiku. It's good to be with you again. It's a rainy evening here in St. Louis, and it's a good time to sit back and think about some haiku. And this one is a very nice one, and it uses the middle pivot technique, which I've mentioned. It's come up more recently in the last several episodes than the previous bunch. And this one is nice, compact, and it's just a tasty little poem that I think really showcases the middle pivot technique and helps focus in on compression and really just choosing the right words, the essential words to make the poem work. So with that said, let's take a look at the poem, shall we? And again, this comes from the latest issue of Wales Haiku Journal. So the poem goes like this. Campfire stew, thickening, night fog. Campfire stew, thickening, night fog. Tasty, isn't it? Lovely piece, lovely poem. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. Man, I love that. Love it when a poem can do everything it needs to do in 5 words, spread across 3 lines. And I said this is a middle pivot poem, and what a middle pivot does is there's, in this case, for the 3-line haiku, that middle line speaks both to the first line and to the second line. And it's the thing that holds the poem together and makes the piece pop. So in this case, we have the middle line of thickening, which speaks to the first line. So you'd have a grouping of campfire stew, thickening. Then you'd also, it relates to night fog. So you can have thickening night fog. And then when that's layered together, you have both things, both the campfire stew and the night fog thickening at the same time. And we're called attention to those things in an order of focus. So we kind of start in focused very tightly on the campfire stew, and then it pans outward to a wider view, like a focal lens and a camera. And that's another technique that's commonly used and something I haven't talked too much about yet so far on the YouTube channel. But that focal point, where you want to draw the reader's attention into the moment. And so this one starts small, and then it pans outward to the wider fog. Very nicely done, Margarita. Very nicely done. And so let's break this down line by line and show how it works. So that first line is campfire stew. Campfire stew. And boy, talk about something that is packed with suggestive language. Now, again, haiku uses, in my mind, language in 3 ways, in the 3 S's: simple, succinct, and suggestive. And we have all things going on in this poem. But this first line really uses suggestive language. And what I mean by that is it uses language that suggests things that are greater than what you're experiencing right there. So campfire stew. In those 2 words, we are put in a setting. Because it's a campfire stew, we know there's a campfire going on. So that means you're outside. That means you're away. You are at camp somewhere out of the city, and put your mind in however you want to camp. Are you in a tent? Are you in a motorhome? Are you in a rooftop tent, which is what I have? Are you out in the backwoods, having backpacked in there and just with the gear on your back? Wherever you go, campfire. That word brings around all sorts of of images and locations, as well as sensory things. You can hear the campfire, you can smell the campfire, you can feel the campfire. And again, the campfire happens outdoors. So a lot of stuff happens with just that one word. Pairing that with stew, again, now it doesn't tell us what kind of stew it is, so it leaves a lot of room for you to infer from your own experience of what that stew is. When you think of campfire stew or stew in general, what stew do you think of? For me right now, I'm thinking of a can of Dinty Moore, the beer of stews, which is just because it's funny and it's yummy. But you know what I mean? It puts you right into a place. And for the campfire stew, again, not only do we have all the sights and smells of the campfire, now you add stew to that mix, and so the smell of the stew, the sound of it bubbling over the campfire, the making of it. Did you make this stew yourself and put it into a pot? What pot are you using? How are you putting it over the fire? Do you have a hook? Is it on a grate? Are you hanging it from some sort of a tree? You know, there's all these things that you have to figure out in your mind of what's going on in this scene, just from these two words. And then what does that stew smell like? What is it going to taste like? Because it doesn't. We don't know yet anything. What's happening. We just know that there's campfire, there's stew. It's great first line. Packed with all sorts of things to think about and to engage with. Then we move to that second line of thickening. All right, so now we know more about the campfire stew, that it's not just there, but you're actually engaged in the cooking of it. You're engaged in stirring it over that campfire, watching it come alive and become this thing that you're going to eat. So you haven't eaten it yet. It's in the process of being cooked. And that, again, engages our senses with the heat of the fire, reaching in to stir that stew with some sort of spoon, hearing it bubble up, watching it thicken. So it also means that you are taking the time to not only cook this, but to really pay attention to how it's being cooked, so that you're noticing the stew is actually thickening. It's not just like you put it on the campfire and you walked away and you're doing other things. No, you're actually engaged in this. Your attention is focused on this moment happening right now. Campfire stew thickening. And that's the first part of that pivot. The campfire stew is thickening. And so this moment that's being captured is now focused on the campfire stew, and we're focused in on it thickening. Then we get to that third line, night fog. Night fog. And suddenly, the thickening that we were watching on the pot, on the campfire, thicken. Now you look up, and you look up from the steam, from the smoke of the fire, and you look around you, and suddenly everywhere you are, everything around you is now covered in a thickening fog. Something that wasn't there necessarily when you started cooking your stew, but now is suddenly thickening along with the stew. And so now we're again compressed in the sense of time, in the sense of something happening in the immediate present, the immediate moment, the eternal now, if you will, and it's continuing to build. And so you're engaged not only with what's right in front of you, but you're also engaged with everything around you being engaged, being thickening. And that's a cool thing to be out in a campsite when suddenly the world gets smaller around you with the fog. And so your line of vision, everything you can see shrinks. So you have the glow of the fire, you got maybe the people right around you, and suddenly you can't see, 10, 15, 20 feet away. And so this is a really, really, really cool poem, a really nice moment that's been captured here, using, again, simple, succinct, suggestive language and a middle pivot to pull us into this moment and give us both a very focused view of something right in front of us and then panning out to see everything around us. Very well done. Very well done indeed. And with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in for another episode of Haiku Talk. It is great to be here and share these things with you. Just imagine people out there where you might be sitting, how you might be watching this. As you can see behind me, I'm in my loft apartment here in St. Louis. Leave a note saying where you're watching this, what part of the world, what room in your house. You're watching this on the phone, in an airplane. Where are you watching this? And if you have some stew, some campfire stew that you like, a recipe or whatever, drop it in the comments. I'd be curious to see what people engage with, how you envision that stew, or where this poem really takes you. Does it take you to a place that you've been? Does it take you to a place you want to go? Does it take you to a place that you've seen or heard other people talk about? Drop it in the comments. Let's see what happens. And with that, again, got to tell you, for the YouTube housekeeping, like this if you've liked the episode with a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, think about subscribing. Another click of the button. And if you've subscribed, think about clicking that bell icon so that you're notified when new episodes come available. With that, we're done. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time.